Alright, what's up? I hope you enjoyed that little introduction of the battle here. And down in front of you, I have ASL scenario number 16 from starter kit number 2, Guns, all set up. And the title of this scenario is Legio, Patria, Nostra. It takes place in Italy on the 18th of June 1944. The belligerents include the Free French on the right and the Germans on the left. This was late war, like I said, 1944, when the French resistance kind of had some momentum going. So this is one particular scenario of them pushing the Germans out of Italy here. It takes place in a fantastic location. It has, deeds of bravery and heroism and just a lot of different stuff. And it seemed like a really, really good pick for my first ASL action report. In the actual battle, the 1st Battalion of the Free French here, uh, there was a lieutenant named First Lieutenant Porel who took 3 men with him and assaulted the Castle Medicis. They snuck into the window and launched an assault on the German garrison. The garrison got freaked out and retreated into the basement, ended up surrendering to the Free French. It was a little crazy. And so meanwhile, outside the battle was going on, and the German guns had a big impact. We got some guns down there. We'll get into them in just a little bit. But overall, in the course of about 24 hours, the Free French pushed them off north, and one step closer to clearing Italy of the Germans here. So the Germans are going to try and make a stand and see if they can change the course of history. The Free French did have to set up first, so the Germans kind of got to react and form a defensive strategy off of what it looked like the Free French were going to do. And the Free French will also make the first move, but there is a couple special rules in this scenario, so we'll discuss those first. And the first one is there's a lot of rain going on right now, so due to the rain, no smoke can be placed, and all units must expend 1 extra movement factor per elevation change up or down, unless using a paved road. So in these hilly areas where there's hexes of road going through them, they won't suffer that penalty of the extra movement factor due to the rain. So the second special rule is the building selected for the Free French setup. The infiltration building, they could have chosen either this one or this one, and they chose this one. So that building is going to have a TEM of +4 because it's fortified, so it gets a +1 on top of the +3 for being a stone building. So it's heavily fortified. I still don't know if that's going to help them to fend off any initial German assault, but we'll see. The Free French have a little bit of a plan that if they can put into action quick enough, it may just work. So the third special rule is all of the German 447 squads, their firepower is actually going to be underlined, so they are going to have assault fire capability in this scenario. All of the second rate line infantry will have assault fire. And so the fourth special rule is we're going to use the British counters to represent the Free French forces. So that's why we have the brown counters set out that look awfully suspiciously like British. It's because they are. So we have no special counters for the Free French forces. That was a little disappointing, but we'll do what we got. And I still think this scenario is very, very interesting. So, we're going to go ahead and do it. The victory conditions, which I have not gone over yet, the Free French have to capture at least 4 buildings, 4 multi-hex buildings by the end of the game. This scenario is going to be 6 turns long, and they have to be northward of this line right here. So this building, here, 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 and those ones back there further north, they could all be taken to meet the requirements for those 4 buildings. Uh, so now you know what the Free French have to do. They already have 1 of 3 in their possession, but we don't know if that's going to last too much longer. So let's take a look at their setup here. We have obviously the lieutenant and his 3 men. They got an MMG, and that is a half squad below that MMG. So I can spread them out in the hex, so that way it's easier to show you the unit, the starting compositions here, and then I'll stack them up after the game begins. But up on the eastern flank here, we have where the main French assault is going to come from, and we have the 9 Neg 1 leader right there, and we have Let's see, we got 6-5. I can't see that far right now. Let's see what those guys are. 6-4-6. So they're elites. Their elites are 6-4-6. And we're going to have a 6-4-6 there, and then 4-5-6, and then another 6-4-6. So these 6-4-6, one has an LMG, the other has an MMG. And then we have two 4-4-6 squads right here. And all these are elite, by the way, so they move a little bit faster. And these two are stacked. They do not intend on remaining so. They're gonna, work their way here and see whatever they can do with this room that they got on the eastern flank. That's what they'll do. Whatever, they got the end of the world there, but they're gonna try and work with it because they got some heavy support from these MGs right there. Anyway, they do have one unit of 4-5-6 in reserve. These three hexes are orchards, so there is a little bit of room for firing in between these buildings into these orchards, but thankfully they got some extra cover from those orchards, and also the French have the first move, so they're going to probably hit these buildings right from the get-go and take whatever defensive fire comes their way from the inside of those buildings. So down here in the middle, we have the second Free French leader, and that's going to be all the leaders that they got. So they have an 8 Neg 1 right here. He's a sergeant, and he's going to have a 4-5-6 unit down below, and another 4-5-6, another 4-5-6 right here. This guy's up on a hilltop building. This guy's in a stone building right here. So these guys, I think their intentions right here, I don't know. This might be the best path is just strike through here, but they're gonna try and relieve that castle and do what they can. So back to the plan. I did forget to tell you what these guys are gonna do. They're gonna try and swoop over and get this building, give some semi-relief to the castle while doing so, and then if they can take over that and get all three of them, that'll be great because they're gonna go after the castle. So that would be three buildings right there of the four, and that would make these guys have an easy day if they can only get that one, and that would secure victory for the French. If they can go with that plan, that's what they're going to do. Down here, they have 4-5-8, 4-5-8, and 4-5-8, and 4-5-8. This 4-5-8 has a mortar right here, and I think I was saying 4-5-6 for some of these guys, but these guys are all 4-5-8. Sorry, I was intending to do this earlier in the day. Now the sun's going down, and it's a little bit harder to see at this time of day. I don't know. Maybe I've also been working, so my eyes are a little tired. Anyway, so they got some mortar support down here as well that they can pinpoint some fire, hopefully, on top of some German heads over in the north. And let me switch sides over to the north, and we'll take a look at the Germans. They're pretty stocked up heavily on the east to counterattack. Remember, the Germans got to set up second, so they got to kind of react to the Free French deployment here. So they got their heavy stockpile here. They got their middle of their line right here. They have their two guns right here, and then kind of their western flank force right here. They're going to kind of harass. So I'll get into the unit compositions, but first I'm going to tell you the plan. And the plan is pretty much just as you can see right here in the middle. We're going to kind of launch an assault on there, see what we can do. Right here, we're going to hold on to that building as long as possible, hopefully the whole game. Down there, he's part of that group too. He gets vision into the center plaza there. And this guy's going to hold this avenue approach right there. And these guns, we'll get into those in a little bit. So we do have some fallback positions. The Germans can fall back, and they can actually, if we can hold on to 1, 2, 3 buildings right here, that would only give the, or if we, excuse me, if we could hold on 1, 2, 3 buildings right here, that only gives up 3 buildings to the Free French. So our real last line of defense is right here, this building. This building we can't let go of at all costs, has to be held. Unless they push this way and they take it over, we still, there's other variables in there that, we might be able to lose that building and be okay. But for the most part, if we stick to our fallback plan and the Germans have to fall back from here with whatever forces they have left, we're going to try and hold on to these last 3 ones and deny the Free French any of those buildings, and that'll keep them locked at 3. So now we'll take a look at the actual compositions. We have a solid leader up here, a 9-1 leader, and he's going to have a 447 and a 467 squad. The 467 is going to have an LMG. I did want to put a range 6 rifle squad up there, so obviously they can get some early shots in and maintain that fire throughout the entire Allied advance to the north. And they do have a 447 squad in reserve. Yes, it's a 447 squad. So just in case, if they have to support a orderly withdrawal or whatever the case may be, they do have a reserve. We have a 467, a rifle squad with good range. That way they can start targeting here, possibly even between that building and in those avenues right there. So we got some good fields of fire up on the eastern flank. Down in the center, we have one squad, 447, who's obviously getting ready to set up for a charge there, and we have another 447 right here. We have a 8 morale 0 leader, and he has a 467 squad with him. That 467 is going to maybe fire team up with these guys, try and suppress them out, however we had to clear these guys out, we're going to do. But what their main intention is to turn their direction this way and cover these avenues of fire and hold down anybody who's hitting these woods and this building to try and get the uphill approach into the castle. That's what their main duty is, and hopefully we can get these two units up into the castle ASAP. These guys, 467, they got the long range here. Obvious reasons, avenue of approaches here and here, and hopefully they'll be able to hold that area down, but they are going to be ready to be mobile. They have been told by their superiors to be ready to move and stay sharp, so that's what they're going to do. Over here, we got the German guns, and we have a German AT gun right here, and that's going to be a PaK 40 and its crew. And I chose to put them in the woods right here after seeing the Free French setup, because from what it looks like to me, I haven't measured the LOS, but from what it looks like to me, this AT gun can hit this avenue of approach, not only hold down anything that happens to run up in here, which is inevitable, but it just might be able to squeak through some shots in between this hill and these woods into these hexes over here. So that would be a big bonus, and you know what? If we can plug away at these hexes with an AT gun, that is going to be fantastic for the Germans. The second gun we have is going to be the 36 millimeter AA, and that gun right there has pretty much one focus. It may, you never know, the focus may change depending on how the battle swings. It may have some good line of sights up in this area, but its main focus for this battle is going to be to hit the castle and hit it hard. And anytime there's Free French, it's just going to be lighting up those stone walls indefinitely. It's going to just hammer them out of there until the Germans can take over that castle and form up a solid line, vertical east and west line right there by taking over that castle. So you can see this gun is in a little orchard area, and on a hilltop, so it has a little bit of extra cover. And it also has a line of sight protection from this area, which is vulnerable to this gun. This approach right here is vulnerable to this gun because obviously it has no line of sight and only has one squad protecting it. So that's something we got to keep in mind, is that factor of vulnerability to our anti-tank gun. Of course, if that's fallen, there's always going to be the danger of losing that as well, because that's just right around the corner. But we do have these gentlemen right here that are going to try and mop these guys up rather quickly, and that will free them up for this entire line of defense right here, which will secure that area all that much more. So I am looking forward to this action report, actually. The more I talk about it, the more I want to get going. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do sit reps for each round for each of the sides during the turn. So we'll do 2 sit reps per turn, one for the Free French as they move and one for the Germans as they go. Maybe we might stop it in some key points, maybe for some die roll, maybe not. I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but I am super stoked. So let's get going. All right, all right. The Free French are just about to wrap up their first round of the game here. They're getting ready to go into the route phase, but before that, I wanted to talk about some things before I took off the residual fire markers and a couple other things. So, basically, the Free French started off with an all-out advance for the most part across the board, and up top on the east side, they really advanced hard. Everybody just moved, kind of formed up into a line formation. They're moving on out. The commander over there is in that big stack, and he managed to advance up into a stone building. They did draw a lot of fire there, but fortunately for them, they didn't sustain anything from that except the residual firepower marker. So everybody else advanced. A lot of fire and rounds came in this direction right here, and once again, they came out unscathed. So looking good for the Free French on the east side so far. In the middle of the map, it was a different story. Once the battle started, everybody in this area who was planning on going across here kind of reconsidered that and started going down here. And so you can see the Free French have kind of gotten funneled down west away from the castle in the center there. So that's one part of their plan that's going haywire in the beginning. Another thing is this squadron right here. I left underneath, or excuse me, on top of that temporary marker just so we could talk about what happened with that squad. That squad has actually been eliminated. They were initially deployed at the beginning of the game in this building. This commander right here decided they were going to be the squad that were going to reconnoiter this area right here. And as soon as they stepped out onto this hilltop road right here in this hex, the German AT gun indeed has a beautiful line of sight and straight up into that road area. And they took a heck of a shot and scored it and then rolled a 4 on their fire table, eliminating that squadron. So the Free French have already lost a squadron. You know, I haven't played, although I'm a long-time player of ASL, coming back from an extended break. I haven't played extensively, so, and I can't remember ever having a game where I lost, at least not this sort of game where we were having losses on the first round that early. But so that's pretty cool. I hope to have a lot of firsts playing this game actually. So I've barely even touched the surface with it, and I got a lot more stuff to show you here in the upcoming videos that I have very soon. So anyway, back to this. You can see the forces that were originally deployed on the west down here in these orchards. They've moved up north about as far as they can go. Now there's nothing but open ground. There is nothing but a light German defense holding that road right there. So they are going to try and push forward there and see what they can do. They are a little disappointed that they couldn't immediately get somebody moving in this direction. They were trying to get some people up in here just about the time they can secure this area and start suppressing these buildings. That way, this advance up this hill would have support or wouldn't be, having counter support from the Germans at that point in time. So that, like I said, that plan is obviously dynamic and it's going to be changing as we go along here. And I'll be interested to see what happens there. Speaking of that plan, the castle itself drew a lot of fire from everywhere in this area, and the castle has proven to be a castle. They haven't given up nothing yet, not a scratch to the Free French that are inside there, and they are looking good and sitting tight. We'll see if the Germans can knock them out of there. They're going to have to crack that egg here pretty soon, I think, the way it's going. When they were shooting up there, the Germans up here, I don't know if I mentioned, but the fire was completely ineffective. But the lieutenant's machine gun, the squadron that's manning that machine gun, their gun has is jammed, so they no longer have an operating MG. They're going to get on the ball and try and fix that ASAP, see what they can do. Their LMG is where their second LMG up top is still working, so they're not completely offline there. And also, they have 2 full squadrons and a third in reserve. And also, the hilltop house right there is still manned as well. Moving on to, I think, the last thing to talk about here, and that's the AA. The AA gun took some shots at the castle as well. We didn't bother to switch down and use it as a machine gun. We used it as full out artillery, and we scored a hit. We also maintained the rate of fire. The fortifications of the castle just proved too much. Couldn't do anything, couldn't dent it. We took a second shot, and that was even worse. So, like I said, that castle is holding up. It's drawn a lot of attention so far. A lot of that attention could be directed southward for the Germans, but it's not. So every second that their guns are pointed to that castle is another step that they can take in there. Speaking of steps, after the rout phase, the Free French are going to do their advance phase. And for the most part, I think the only advancing that'll probably going on are up top on the east side are probably these two guys going to edge one space closer to those buildings. And this guy will probably edge in one more down here. He'll go in there. He'll go down one. And I don't know if we'll start this advance right now or not. We'll have to think about that. But anyway, that's it for this sit rep, and we will see you back here at the other side on the Germans' turn. Here's a sit rep for the second half of the first turn, and we have wrapped it up, so we are actually all ready to move on to the second turn here, but we'll go ahead and recap exactly what took place. The Germans did a whole lot of prep fire right at the start of the turn. Everybody fired with the exception of this squad and this squad, and they were previously located in this building and this building. So the Germans have done a little bit of a line shift where they could. We'll get to that in just a moment. Like I said, the prep fire is pretty much ineffective. This map turns out to be the map that just keeps on giving and giving, at least for this woods hex right here. If somebody has map W from the second starter kit at home, want to double check my measurements, feel free to go right ahead. I'm very confident in my measuring. I measured it several times over, but this AT gun has a line of sight from this woods hex down this avenue right here in between the stone building and the hill into this stone building here. So they have managed to target acquisition. They did get a solid hit on that building, but unfortunately the damage roll was ineffective, just like everything else the Germans are doing currently. Speaking of ineffective, the AA gun as well unloaded into the castle. That castle is proving to be quite the challenge for the Germans. The AA gun maintained its rate of fire, but couldn't get through the defenses. So they still got a problem right in the middle of their defense there. Actually, during the advance phase, I was pretty ready to withdraw him, but he has, nowhere to go, really. And also, I don't want to give up that free space in this area because these guys aren't going to have line of sight because of this hill. So I don't want a free advance in there. During the defensive fire, the French didn't have any first fire. It was all pretty much 100% final fire because there was no Germans moving. So we can sum up what happened here pretty quick. The castle, he unloaded where the leader and his squad was currently. This squad was actually over in that hex right there. The leader and this squad were right here. The uh, the leader passed his morale check. They were forced into a normal morale check. The leader passed it. The squad failed. During the rout phase, the squadron fell back into that building. During the advance phase, the leader moved back into that hex to rout them, hopefully in the upcoming rally phase. And they need to get back into action. In the advance phase, this squadron came down here, obviously, to take the place out of that gap in the defense. That this section is definitely more important than holding that building. So hopefully that leader can run. This is going to be a very important role for that route there. And the other action that happened is right here. We unloaded with the 3 fire group, 1, 2, 3, and they unloaded a tremendous amount of firepower minus the mortar. There's a building hex right there, but they unloaded a tremendous amount of firepower into this hex where that squad was currently occupied. and they force a 2MC check onto that squad. They failed, and they also failed and surpassed their ELR limit. So they lost one or two of their more experienced privates or whatnot, and they were knocked down to a second-rate line squad from a first-rate line squad. So the previous statistics of the uh, first rate were a 467, and this new squad is going to be a 447. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. So that pretty much sums up the second half of the first turn here. We're going to go ahead and move. The only thing I forgot to mention is this AA gun now has a pretty good targeting solution on that building, so he's getting a -2 DRM every time. It's just going to keep on pounding away at that castle. Sooner or later, that AA is going to crack that barrier. Hopefully, we'll see. We're going to stop and take a look at sit rep number 3, and we are halfway done with the second turn. You can see there's been a whole lot of movement on behalf of the French side, and they've managed to push quite far ways north there on the map. So let's talk about what happened real quick. Up on the east side, you can see we had a big rush across this open ground here. This squadron right here did get some defensive first fire from this machine gun right here, and they did get a casualty reduction on that. They did manage to pass their MC check, even though it was like a 2 MC check, and they kept on booking it, man, straight across that ground. They ended up right here, stacked up with this squad, and in the advanced phase, they split up, and now they both occupy their respective hexes. This guy came from here, this guy came from here. This guy decided, this leader decided to get his men and his MMG out of that building that had the target acquisition from that AT gun. That AT gun was actually distracted in the meantime from a squadron that came from over here. They were attempting to cross this road, get up here. When they got to that tree line, the AT gun immediately targeted them because they were in rifle range of that gun. So they did get a good solid hit in, and their damage unfortunately was only a pen roll, so it's better than nothing. At least they didn't get any shots off on the gun, so that was the main thing. And we did have another casualty down here. This squadron was down there and tried to come running around here, took some defensive fire from there. They rolled a 4, and along with the movement in open ground and a no assault movement, that equaled a KIA. So the Free French have lost their second squadron in this battle. These guys right here managed to cover a lot of ground. They got to right about here. It was going to take an awful lot of movement points to get up these wet, muddy hills right here, but they managed to get at the base of them. And then at the assault phase, or the advance phase, they advanced up one hex into that hill. So it may only seem like one hex, but that's a heck of a lot of ground for a free move. So good for the French. Other than that, the AA once again put more rounds into the castle. Nothing. You can see this leader had managed, once the AT gun was distracted with him, he booked it from here up to here, and in the advanced phase got the other free move up into the hillside. One plan of him, the reason I brought him down here instead of here, is because he can move up here without the negative, or without the movement factor penalty for the rain, and then he has a pretty good overlook to support these guys from here. So he's still with that side of the map there. Other than that, that's about all that happened that turn. I say that's all, but that was actually an awful lot. We are with the Germans. My intentions there, if you didn't notice before, I didn't mention this last turn, but if you didn't notice, these guys were respectively, this guy was here, this guy was here. They've already shifted down. This guy's already begun shifting down. That guy shifted down. We are going to shift down. They actually got the jump on the Germans pretty good here. I thought the Germans were going to have one more turn to do some pulling back here and get in a good position, but it looks like if these guys want to avoid any defensive fire here in their next phase, looks like they're going to have to go northeast, which is not the direction they want to go. So we'll see what they're going to do here. We will see in just a couple minutes. The Germans have just finished up the second half of turn 2, and we are going to move on to turn 3 in just one moment. However, I want to talk about what transpired over the last round. And over on the east side up here, I left a temporary counter marker there just so I'd remember what had happened there. But the lieutenant managed to kick his squad into gear, and they got their MG back online, and they proceeded to open fire on the squadron that was here. I believe that was already a half squad that had been reduced, and got a kill, so wiped it out. So the Free French lost another squadron there. And not only that, but this LMG and its squadron opened fire on this squad that was right here, and they received a casualty reduction as well. They did pass their MC, so they're still in action, thankfully, for the French. And they've thinned out quite a bit, as you can see on the east side. The lieutenant does still have the squadron and their MMG available for use as well. So they're going to try and book it up to here, excuse me, and try and get in some covering fire in there. I don't know how good of prospects these squadrons face here. So they do got a LMG that can maybe put down some prep fire. Hopefully they need to get a solid pin at minimal in somewhere in there, hopefully. Also on this side, this squadron, which originally started the game on the Hilltop House a round or two ago, had routed to this hex. Well, the sergeant has been advancing, as you know, up towards the castle and put another DM counter on them. They had to route again. They could not route here because that would have been adjacent to the the lieutenant and his squadron there. So they had to low crawl out into the ground to avoid interdiction from these units over here. So they're currently basically pinned to the ground in the middle of the road at the bottom of the hill. But the one good thing is they're one space closer to the lieutenant, and there was no way he was going over that way. So, that's if they can survive these guys here for just another moment, maybe they can get out of that jam. Who knows? We'll find out. You can see I was shifting downwards towards the west with some of the forces over here. These guys were intending on doing the same. I was going to have them fall back to here, and they were going to fall back to here. That way anybody entering that building would take immediate double firepower from there, and this squadron, the lieutenant who would have been here, could have also interdicted in these hexes if anybody was to move there. So we could have gotten some good defensive fire shots in, but at the same time, they had such an effective prep fire phase in this area that it kind of gave them some confidence. They're going to go ahead and try and maintain control of this building up top here for just another round or two. We'll see how it goes. Excuse me. The AA gun, once again, unloaded into the castle, completely ineffective once more. As we were shifting westward with here to here and here to here, I was originally trying to draw their fire with this squadron by moving into the houses. I don't remember what way they came. They came from somewhere, but they ended up here. They were basically trying to draw the fire from there. They did not bite. They saved their fire when these guys attempted to move from here to here. Then they intervened and they ended up giving them a pin marker. So these guys are stuck where they're at. The sergeant right here managed to rally his squadron, so they're back in action. And this squadron right here has routed once more from there to here because they received another DM marker. The AT gun had fired again, reached its second target acquisition in the woods here, and put down a solid hit and only got a pen check out of him, which they failed. So he got the pen on them, which was very useful because he was unable to fire back at the gun crew. So that was one good thing that happened down there for the West. So the Germans are, trying to just mobilize here westward, I guess, and the British or excuse me, the French are going to try and consolidate up here in this area, see what they can work with. The mortar did finally get a chance to get involved here. This squadron right here has a squeaky line of sight to this building, and they're spotting for this mortar in their squadron right here. And put down one shot, did not maintain rate of fire, but did get its first target acquisition on the building there. So it's time to go to work for those guys, and we'll see what they can do. But I think that pretty much covers everything. I'm a little bit worried about the French's position along the eastern line here. We'll see what transpires in just the next couple of moments. It's going to happen fast, I can tell you that, so we'll be right back. Back again at 3.5. We're halfway through the third turn. Looks like the French had a little bit of momentum on their side this turn. And as you can see, I put a temporary counter right there to mark the elimination of that German squad who had routed out there in the open. The sergeant and his squad who had originally pushed them out in their advance moved up into the castle, took some defensive fire from a couple locations, got through it because of the castle, and then they opened up on that vulnerable squad out there and made them pay for being out there. They are done. Down in the west down here, again, these guys, they advanced in the advance phase, but in the prep fire phase, they were right there. And actually, you know what? I forgot to route that unit during the route phase. This unit needed to route, so we'll go ahead and do that now. We'll move them down, so now they're routed there. So, but that unit had shot them, and they actually suffered a casualty reduction as well. So they're now a half squad, even if they do get rallied. But chances of that aren't looking so good, and that AT gun is now going to be vulnerable. I'd put money on that's a clean shot right there. So Germans are in some trouble down there in the west. Let's see. I think I made a big mistake with the placement of that AA gun. It's a big possibility that those are legitimate placements. However, I probably should have swapped the two of them. I should have had the AA gun down here in the woods, the AT gun up here. I think it would have been much more effective the other way around. The AA would have had an easier time with these non-fortified buildings, whereas the castle defenses wouldn't have mattered so much to the AT. So keep that in mind for future playthroughs of this. But the mortar advanced there after this squad had advanced. The mortar advanced here, so they're going to use them as the spotter. But they did launch again, receive their second acquisition. Part of it's just laziness on my part. I don't know if the mortar loses that acquisition during the advance phase if they advance one hex, which they did. Oh my gosh. They did advance during that phase. So I'm not sure if they lose that. But for right now, I'll go ahead and keep it there. Like I said, I just didn't feel like looking the rule up. I apologize if I was incorrect on that, if I should have removed that acquisition. But I think that pretty much covers it. The AT gun in its defensive fire phase, this squadron, originally the AT gun had its target acquisition of 2 in these woods, if you remember. But during the movement phase, that squadron used assault movement to get out of those woods and into this stone building. And he opened up with defensive first fire. Uh, he did get a hit and pinned them, so they were pinned. Now, I left that on there just as a reminder, as always. But I just wanted to show you what happened there. And the AT gun now has its first target acquisition on the stone building as well. So I think that about covers everything. Oh, up on the east side here, this half squad that was out in the open right here, they had withdrawn to the wood building right there, and they took some defensive first fire from this machine gun, but it was a no-go and didn't cause any casualties there to that squadron. So the French have kind of rethought their eastern plan. But the good thing about the French is they have completely taken control of the center here, and they don't intend on giving it up now. I can tell you that. The castle has received more reinforcements than I had expected to get up there. But at the same time, I had expected to take this building already by this time of the game here. So this was the end of the French third turn, so that marks their halfway point, and we'll see what else they can work with here. But I think they still got a strong momentum here, especially in the west down there and in the center. So 2 out of 3 spots, I'd say the French have a stronger outlook than the Germans, especially after this last French turn. Like I said, the Germans took a casualty reduction here, and they had a squadron eliminated here. So slowly but surely, they're building up for the Germans, and it could go either way. We'll see you with another sit rep in just a moment. Back again at the end of the third. The Germans just finished it up here. And down below, you can see a lot has actually transpired this last round, mainly in favor of the French, actually. So the Germans opened up with some prep fire from up east here. And the lieutenant was originally down there, but we'll get to that in just a moment. We did manage to put a pen marker on this full squad that was there, and also the half squad that had withdrawn previously to that location was broken, received a DM counter, and during the route phase, they moved back here to this building with this squad, so they are below the squadron with the machine gun. They're down there, that half squad. So, but like I said, they're broken. The lieutenant did put down some fire out here and managed to break the squad that was in this building here with their light machine gun. And so during the advance phase, the lieutenant moved up there. Hopefully during this upcoming rally phase, he's going to rally them. So that's the German plan, at least. Other than that, not much change down here in the center. Everybody was pretty stationary. They didn't want to draw any defensive fire from the castle, which is now fully stocked with soldiers, it looks like. But when the lieutenant was down here before his advance phase, they opened up a large amount of firepower. They have the LMG actually down there with the assist. But not only that, that lieutenant had a neg 1 to his dice roll in commanding the fire. So they managed to actually pin the squadron that's with the sergeant there, but the sergeant wasn't fazed by it. The sergeant's turning out to be pretty wise, pretty tough. The AT gun fired on these soldiers here. That's why the target acquisition has been moved to that building. It didn't do anything. They did return fire in their defensive fire phase and didn't get any results from that either. So there was some heavy exchange of fire back and forth here, but nothing, nothing really had any effect. The mortar fired again, didn't sustain fire, and didn't score a hit either. So that's where that is. The AA continues to keep on going in on there and doesn't do anything. So, like I said, I'm regretting more and more the placement of that AA gun every turn. It's not necessarily the placement, it's the fact that it only has one target to shoot at, and that's the most heavily fortified thing on the map. So, Yeah, it's not going too good for them. But other than that, you can see here, the half squad that was broken down here was eliminated by defensive fire in the defensive fire phase. So, and that's why I usually put those wounded markers down there so I remember to talk about it when it happens. And so, yeah, there was a German squad eliminated up here. This German squad is broken, so the flanks are looking shaky once again. It's not like they ever look secure, but the Germans are doing what they can with what they got to work with. And we'll check back here in just a moment. That was the end of the French half of the fourth turn here, so we are moving pretty deep into the game. And not much has changed. The French were kind of brought to a standstill, so I made one key decision that may or may not turn out for the French. So we'll see in just a second. But up top here, you can see there has been a DM counter placed up here. They drew a fire group from down below after a pretty ineffective prep fire phase. Every unit pretty much that the French had except for this squadron prep fired and didn't really achieve anything at all. So in response to that, during the defensive fire, the Germans opened up pretty good. The anti-tank was ineffective, completely missed that building again, and the AA, of course, was also ineffective. So these guys all tried to shoot at various targets here to no avail. But these guys up here, this LMG managed to pen this squadron right here, and this unit managed to put down some heavy firepower they have in the other LMG. Yeah, so the squadron with the LMG as well, both LMGs. This one fired upon here and pinned the squadron and broke. Well, actually, they didn't pin the squadron. They broke the leader, the 9-1 leader. They broke him, and in response, the squadron passed their MC check, but they failed their leader lost task check. So they took the pen marker, and that's what that is all about. So this unit has been brought to a screeching halt in a matter of moments, and that is a big, big plus for the Germans here, going in deep into turn 4. So the French don't have much longer to pull this off. So down in the west, I think this is what the French are going to focus on here. The French are going to focus, obviously, they have the castle, and they have now captured this building here a turn or two ago. We got to really focus to clear this building out, and if we can do that, I think the castle can really cut off anybody from securing this area down here, this hill. So that's the new mission plan right now, is really secure this area, feign the attack up here, because we don't want these guys just feeling comfortable enough to where they can take off and go, or even one. If this unit can leave and go reinforce, that's reinforcements we don't want down here. So we need to hold these guys up here. That's the new objective. And then capture this building and this building. So these two buildings are our new objectives right now. So if the French can pull that off, then they got to win. They brought the mortar in because we're doing an advance through these woods here. We're going to try and take out the AA, or excuse me, the AT, and capture that building as well. But for the most part, we want to get a direct line of sight. That mortar again, once again, missed that building, so using the spotter. So to me, it's just not effective right now. Maybe under different circumstances, especially if the units we were trying to hit weren't in stone buildings, it'd be a different story. You know, if they're in woods, that'd be great. Open ground would be good. But you know, they're in a building, so it's just not being effective. We got to get some visual with that squad so they can adjust their firing solutions and walk some rounds onto that building in an appropriate way, because they're just not getting any results from that, and they're really going to need that mortar to bust through here in the next couple turns. So we'll check back in with the next sit rep. See you in just a second. All right, guys, we're going to check out the status of things here at the end of turn 4. The sit rep is pretty much mixed news across the front for the French. This was the German action phase, and what took place was a whole bunch of prep fire, no movement at all from the Germans. Everybody's pretty much locked down in place where they're at. So everybody have just opened up what they have, and didn't really get much achieved. The AT gun fired here, completely miffed this shot, and that means that this guy right here, these two had the fire group and opened up on him. They only drew a pen marker on him, so tough luck on the west side for the Germans. But more bad news over there is the lieutenant. They finally put down some killer rolls on this squadron right here and ended up breaking them. But not only did they break them, but the squad also failed their ELR test. So they got dropped from a second rate into a conscript squad, a 236 half squad of conscripts. So more bad news for the Germans down there. That's one step closer for the French to achieving their goal of adding these two buildings, and that would secure victory for them if they can do that and hold on to those buildings. Another great thing that happened is these two, this squadron right here opened up right here and broke the crew of the AT gun. So they're going to be pretty much out of action unless they can rally up there. So they got a pretty good rally roll, and they can self-rally. You can see it has the box around their morale of 8. So there's a good chance that they'll rally up on the next turn. Um, Obviously, it's the French's turn, and that pen marker is it should already have come off. But like I said before, I leave them on there just to remind me to talk about certain things. So um, obviously, they're not going to be pinned for their turn, so they're going to probably be able to advance. Probably use a movement in the movement phase to go into these woods, catch some fire from this squadron here, and then advance into close combat and take over that gun. Now that I'm thinking about it, if the French can turn this gun on this position, that's a really, really big bright spot for the French. So they got new things coming into their minds by the minute here. Things are looking kind of sharp for them down here. In the castle's still holding steady, hasn't given up a single casualty the entire battle. But right here, the 9 Neg 1 lieutenant that was in this wooden building right here, that is not a temporary marker. These two squadrons formed a fire team and unloaded onto this little kill shack right here. And the leader caught a wound, as you can see, and the squad below him was broken. So fortunately, they didn't receive a casualty reduction or anything, but they are broken. So this entire stack is pretty much out of action for the time being, and we'll see if the French can change that. But as of this time, it's looking pretty good for the French. Now that this guy's out of action here, I think they can finally maybe start an advance out there. They will have to deal with a little bit of crossfire still, but these guys are freed up a little bit. We don't necessarily have to focus too much on those guys because they're pinned down right where they're at. I don't see them making this journey across here. It's very perilous for them to do so, so I doubt it. Right now, the odds are kind of looking like they're swinging towards the French rather quickly. We'll check back here in just a minute. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are halfway through turn 5, and the Free French have basically rung the bell here. You may not see it from my perspective, but let me explain really quickly. Well, I should actually take this off too, and I'll get to the reasoning behind that as well. But for the most part, we had a large British amount of fire that did a lot of hurt this round, actually. The castle and this squad and this squad that was in the trees, they had just unloaded on the building. Between all the fire that went in there, they managed to break the leader and the squad that's in there. So this building is pretty much completely defenseless at this time, which is why these squads have gone into a full tilt advance at this point. These guys are hucking it through the woods. These guys are moving in on an assault on that building right now. These guys have come out of the woodworks here, and they're going to advance across as well. This squad up here, who's in that building, was fired upon, I think maybe by fire team or just one, I can't remember. But bottom line is they were broken and they fled during the rout phase. So that's where that's at now. This is not so well guarded by the Germans, so this approach is now much more feasible and accessible at this point for the French. The castle is still fully secured. I debated advancing across here, but the threat of oncoming power is too great. I did also debate actually advancing over here to split the Germans' decision between here and there, but I figured, there's always a possibility they could get some really good rolls, completely wipe out any advancing forces here, and then have the complete, free and clear to come down here and join this fray in this area that may be getting ready to take place here. So um, the French decided against that. They're going to play it conservative here. They did catch some fire from this squad before they were broken. They fired at long range at half firepower at the mortar squad who was down here. They got a really good lucky roll and broke that squad on a +1 MC. And during the rout phase, they booked it to that stone building. And once again, on a rules lookup issue, I wasn't in the mood to look it up. I'm not sure if they should have dropped that mortar. That mortar cost 5 portage points to move. And actually, when they failed their MC. It was actually a casualty reduction, not an MC. So it was a casualty reduction that they received. So that was I don't think they should have been able to take that mortar with them. But like I said, I'm playing semi-advanced here, and in a couple more games, I will eventually be playing the rules to the T. But right now, I'm just kind of having some fun getting back into the game, and I am getting about, I'd say, 95 to 98% of it right. I do know that on screen, you're probably seeing things that you're wondering about or whatnot. It's I'm not taking the time to explain everything like I said, but for the most part, I am catching, like sometimes I'm forgetting to put a counter on there, like a DM counter, like I said, on that crew. So I know I'm missing little stuff here and there, but off camera, I'm catching the majority of it. So I don't think I'm making a tremendous amount of mistakes here, but I'm sure you guys will let me know. It's all good. Anyway, I think that about wraps up everything I have to say about the halfway point of turn 5. I don't think the Germans are going to last much longer, honestly. We'll see in just a minute. Well, we are inching ever so closer to the conclusion of this battle here, and we just finished up turn number 5 with the Germans being the active party. So, not much to say on their behalf. They didn't really have many troops available to do anything. In this area, there was a lot of fire exchange between these groups, and I don't remember the combination of, but the reserve squad right here ended up getting pinned, and the sergeant and his squad on the French side in the castle ended up getting pinned. So that's the best results we've seen in the castle this entire game, and it was a single pin marker. And it really came too late to do anything. The Germans can't really use that to capitalize on anything. So it's still not looking too bright for the Germans here. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the French, and the French are quite happy with the way things are turning out. The lieutenant was unable to rally his squad, but that's okay. I think he'll have some luck now that the DM counters are gone here. The artillery crew received another DM counter and withdrew during the rout phase to this building. So the paths are pretty much open here for a big French assault on these two buildings. And I think they can pull this off just in the nick of time. So I may just take a look here at the end of the turn. Next sit rep probably be the end of this. We'll find out in just a second. Well, all right already. This is going to be the end of it here. You can see the French have successfully secured their 4 objectives. They have the castle, they never lost possession of that. This 2-hex building, and this building way in the rear here. So the Germans do have 1 round of actions left. However, they can't really do much. They have this squad who can move, and these 2 as well. Neither of them, I mean, they could launch an assault on the castle. We know how that's going to go, or they could launch an assault down here to try and make one of these objectives challenged. And I just don't foresee that really happening at this point. The only option, this would be an extreme move of desperation on the edge of cheating. I don't know if this would even be allowed, but I could take this crew here and move this crew in here. Of course, they'd have to face defensive fire, but if they could secure that and end their move there, this building would be contested, and the French would actually lose the game. But I'm not going to leave the game hanging on the balance of an artillery crew. I just don't think that would be feasible in real life. Although it may be legal in this game, I don't know. I'm going to bypass that. So if you're a rule monger and you want to stick to the rules by the books, guess what? The Germans may have won this game by going down there with the artillery crew, but I'm not going to play it like that. So as of now, the Germans are out of options. This is their last round to secure one of those objectives, and it cannot be done. I am going to attempt with this squad to probably run up in the castle, and if they can do that, then I'll give the victory to the Germans. But if you don't see me back here, that means they failed miserably and got chopped down somewhere in this plaza right here, and that's what I'm pretty much expecting to happen. So thanks for joining me on this battle report, and I will see you during the next one. Peace out.